Welcome back to Lead Full Circle, where we emphasize leading well at work, but even better at home. And today I am honored to sit down with Jared Hudson. But before we begin these conversations, let me introduce you to Jared. Jared Hudson is a business owner, CEO of a nonprofit, law enforcement officer, Navy SEAL veteran, and community leader. As a former U.S. Navy SEAL sniper, Jared exemplified the highest standards of military excellence and leadership. During his service, he earned numerous accolades, including multiple Navy, Marine Corps, and Army Commendation Medals for Valor, as well as multiple Navy, Marine Corps, and Army Achievement Medals, highlighting his exceptional bravery and commitment to duty. Transitioning from his military career, Jared founded the Shooting Institute, TSI, a premier training company dedicated to providing tactical expertise to law enforcement agencies and civilians nationwide. His passion for excellence and his extensive experience make him a sought-after instructor in the field of tactical training. Jared is also the visionary founder and current CEO of Covenant Rescue Group, a nonprofit organization committed to combating human trafficking and child exploitation. His tireless advocacy and hands-on involvement in this critical mission demonstrate his profound compassion for the most vulnerable members of society. Since its inception in 2019, CRG has helped rescue over 2,000 people out of trafficking and helped in the arrest and prosecution of over 300 criminals. This year, Jared announced his candidacy for the United States Senate, driven by his unwavering commitment to service, accountability, and defending American values. He brings the same determination and leadership that defined his military and professional career to his vision for the future of this nation. Outside of his professional endeavors, Jared finds fulfillment in his role as a devoted husband to his wife, Lauren, and as a loving father to their 3 children. So let's welcome Jared Hudson to Lead Full Circle. Well, Jared, thank you again for joining us today. We're excited to have this conversation as we talk about leading well at work, but even better at home. So thank you so much for taking time to join us here at Lead Full Circle.
Hey, Graham, thanks for having me, brother.
So I want to start kind of with the big picture. When you think about leadership, not really just your position or a title, when you hear the word leadership, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, being a Christian, a born-again believer in the person of Jesus Christ, the Sunday school answer, the Christian answer would always be Christ. He was a servant leader. And what's crazy about that is the story of Jesus Christ is a riches to rags story. The God of the universe took up his own strong arm of salvation, as Isaiah 59 says, and came to this earth because he was the only one who could stand before sin and death and ultimately conquer sin and death. And Jeremiah tells us that he's our dread warrior. So when I think of a leader as a Christian, that's what I think of. I think of somebody who stands in the gap no matter the cost. And ultimately, in the person of Jesus Christ, we see that. We see the most perfect being, the one who is there in the beginning that created everything through his word, right? John chapter 1, in the beginning was the word, the logos, the spoken and the unspoken plan of God. Verse 14 tells us that was Jesus. The word became flesh and dwelt among men. We see the God of the universe coming down and standing in the gap on our behalf, even though we don't deserve it, because we're the ones who messed up. So when I think of leadership, that's what I think of. I think of somebody who is willing to elevate the people that they are there to serve before themselves. And I would say that that's probably the first thing that pops into my mind.
Kind of want to tie into that a little bit more. What's the difference in your mind when you hear somebody, a leader who just holds a title versus a leader who can just make a huge influence on somebody?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, the title is an important thing. And as people who are following me, coming from the military or in the law enforcement world, I run an organization and I happen to lead a lot of things, but I'm still sworn with Blount County Sheriff's Office. And Sheriff Mark Moon is my leader. Now, Sheriff Moon is a good sheriff. Don't get me wrong. He doesn't just hold to the title. He actually does a good job as a sheriff. But even if he didn't do a good job, and even if I disagreed with him, if I'm to be a good follower, which will train me to be a good leader, I'm supposed to respect the position, not the man. So I would preface by saying that first. Oftentimes we respect the position, not the person. Ephesians chapter 6 calls us to do that. With that being said, being a good leader is not because people follow action, they follow courage, they follow the willingness to go and do what's right, not so much a title. And I believe it's William Wallace says that in Braveheart. Mel Gibson in the movie Braveheart says men follow courage, not titles. And I think it's important to make that distinction. So if you're following, honor the position, not the person. We're called to honor our parents. Even if your parents are not worthy of being honored, they might be bad parents. Doesn't matter. You're called to honor their position as parents, even if you can't honor them because of the people that they are. I say that as a young man who had great parents, but as a dad who had an alcoholic father who physically abused him, he would say the same thing. He honors the position of his father, not the person of his father, before his father found Christ. That's the first aspect of it. The second aspect of it is people don't follow your titles. So if you're sitting in a position of a title, they don't care. They follow courage.
So now I want to transition to lessons from military leadership. You've had experiences that most of us will never have. You've had some probably high stake moments through your military career, your military time as a Navy SEAL. So a question I have, what's one lesson from your SEAL days that still shapes how you lead today from those lessons you learned as a Navy SEAL?
I would say it's just one word, ability. And it's not even being the best at everything, but it's showing that you can perform the standard that you're requiring of others. I'm a law enforcement officer now here, in Alabama, and as a federal TFO with Homeland Security, and I work child exploitation. And one of the things that I've seen in that ability is that you have a lot of law enforcement leaders who would fire somebody for not meeting the requirements in the state of Alabama, the simple requirement being passing a pistol qualification. But those same leaders that would hold somebody to that standard, they themselves can't pass the pistol qualification. That's something that's very easy, very simple. And if you're going to be an effective leader, what you require your men, and now, and at least in law enforcement, the SEAL teams, it was men only, but in law enforcement, men and women, what you require the people that are under your command to do, you better be able to do yourself. Do not hold a standard that you yourself can't meet. And that's what I've learned in the SEAL teams, and that's what I learned myself as a leader, is that you can't hold a standard that you can't meet. So ability, whatever your standard is, and you've got to hold a standard, you better be able to meet that standard. And that's what I mean when I say ability.
Yeah, for sure. And then also for me, I think about decision making when you're in those moments where it's chaos, it's chaotic situations, and the margin of error is really small. When you hear that, and people can apply that to all areas of life, when it's a chaotic situation, margin of error is small, what would be some advice you would give to them in those type of trying times from a leadership perspective?
Yeah, and I would say I'd taken this again from the SEAL teams, and being an enlisted sniper, I saw this with decisions that I would make, but also saw it with new officers coming in, and this is something that they would definitely lean on. We don't care what decision you make a decision, make it now, because not making a decision is a decision in and of itself. So the word I would use there is precision, very distinct and clear guidance on what we're going to do. Whether it's right or wrong, we'll figure out if we survive this or if we get killed, right? G.K. Chesterton says if a soldier is to cut his way out when he's surrounded by enemies, he can't just sit there, because if he does, he's a coward and he'll die. He can't just be frivolous with his life, because if he runs out, he's a suicide and he'll die. But he's got to seek his life with a spirit of furious indifference to it. He has to desire life like water, yet drink death like wine. And I would say that that is how you make that decision when the world is chaotic. And I'm thinking about gunfights, gunfights I've been in where you have to make a decision. Well, we might get killed in this process. Yeah, we might. We signed up for a dangerous job. Suck it up. That's what's going to happen, right? And we might make it. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen is precision, intentionality, making sure that one, I meet the standard and my guys meet the standard. That's the first part of leadership. But two, when it's time to perform, the day of preparation is over, making sure that I'm very intentional with the act that I need those that are under my command to perform. And it doesn't matter if it's within your family, and it doesn't matter if it's within, military service, law enforcement, business. Be very intentional with what you say, because if you leave room for interpretation, you have no idea what you're going to get.
That's really good, man. That's good stuff. And a little bit too with military leadership and just leadership in general. I think about accountability. Just dealing with students, a lot of times our students, I think at times struggle with being held accountable to certain standards. How important is it for accountability to be a big part of who we are as leaders going through these tough situations, tough times we may be dealing with?
Yeah, well, even going back to ability, if I'm going to hold, because as a leader, I have to, if we're going to be effective, right? If I'm going to hold people that are under me responsible for whatever it is they do, I myself have to be held responsible for the things that I do. And we've seen this so much. So I don't know. I'm sure where I'm running for the open U.S. Senate seat, right? Let's talk the political side. The leaders of this nation are not senators, governors, president, anything like that. The leaders of this nation are we the people, the preamble of the Constitution, right? We the people elect a representative government to do the bidding on our behalf, right? So the first aspect of that is we, the people, are accountable for our own freedoms and our own liberties, and making sure that we get out and we elect the appropriate person to represent us in the appropriate way. And it's my estimation that at least for the 40 years that I've been here on this earth, we've had people that have shirked that responsibility of we, the people. And that is why we have a representative government that looks the way it does right now. Which is unaccountable to any sort of accountability that needs to be held in place. It's the first problem, Jared Hudson. I'm the first problem with those that are elected that are not doing what they need to do, because I haven't been accountable to what I'm supposed to do, and that's making sure that I'm educated on who we're electing to be our representative government. So that would be a really 30,000 foot view example that maybe everybody that's listening can understand. You're accountable for what you do in this nation as we the people. It's not freedom without cost. You're accountable for that freedom because it costs somebody their life. At a minimum, it costs you your vote. And if you're going to give your vote, you need to give it while you're educated. So that's one aspect of it that, again, is a 30,000 foot view. Getting more specifically into maybe military aspect of accountability. As a leader, the guy that's the lowest on the totem pole is not necessarily going to hold that leader accountable, but understanding that that leader has to understand that they are accountable even to the lowest man on the totem pole, because when they're leading, going all the way back to what we talked about earlier, all this ties together. Men follow courage, not titles. So you might have the title and they might respect the position that you're in, but if they don't respect you for who you are, if you're not accountable and they don't respect you in that way, then you're not really leading anybody. They're just there. It's almost like tyrannical rule. They're just doing what they have to, because if you don't, you're gonna fire them, and they're not going to be able to pay the bills to take care of their family. The last aspect of that would be family. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, it says, the first thing it gives us is it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. This is the first command with promise. And that's the first command dealing with people. And it goes down through how we're supposed to obey our parents in the Lord. But it says, fathers, do not make your children hate your leadership, right? Do not exacerbate your children. And what that is that is a responsibility for the leader to make sure that they are being held accountable ultimately to the person of Christ, right? I'm under the headship of Christ as a father, but I've got to make sure that my kids don't hate the hierarchy, because I am the physical representation of the relationship that we have with God the Father. Me and their mother are a physical representation of the relationship that we have with Christ, the bridegroom, and us, the church, the bride. And we have to make sure that we don't make our kids hate that physical representation, because we are a representation of the one that's in charge of us. So I would say that across the board, that is what it means by accountability. Don't make those under you hate the hierarchy that is in place, because a hierarchy is important.
Yeah. So transitioning, a focus for Lead Full Circle this month has been leading with integrity and trust. And for me, as I've kind of studied this over the past few weeks and starting to talk about it this month, I feel like trust is a big deal for a leader to begin with, as far as people aren't going to follow your lead if they don't trust you. If you don't lead with integrity, the trust is going to have a hard time settling in, and for those that you work with or live with to trust you and follow your lead. So what are your thoughts on building trust with those you work with, you live with, just as a leadership principle? How important is it for people to trust you as a leader?
If they're a really good person, they might honor the position, but they don't really honor your leadership if they can't trust you as an individual. You see, the leadership position is neutral in nature. It takes on the face of the person that embodies it, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I embody that leadership position, if I embody it in a way that creates a massive amount of distrust with those individuals that are under me, then the problem is probably with me. Now, on the other end, if you're a person who is following somebody and you just always want to disrespect the position, because we have that too, the rebellion in our spirit, right? And you've probably seen that, especially with your background in school. We've got to make sure that if we're following, we honor the position, even if the person in the position is not honorable. If we're holding that position, we've got to make sure that we bring honor to the position that we embody, because the position itself is neutral. So you honor the position, or you bring honor to that position, depending on which side of the coin you're on. Going back to what I talked about with the run for Senate earlier, I want to ask you a question. Do you trust most of the politicians that we have in place?
Just trust them 100%. Probably not.
Yeah, you took that deep breath in, right?
I did.
No, we don't, right? We don't trust the media. We don't trust politicians. Why? Because they've proven themselves untrustworthy.
That's right.
Now, we're the leaders of this nation. And then I would ask politicians, do you trust the people that you're there to represent and serve? And a lot of them would say no, because, well, again, a lot of the people have not been educated enough in the things they need to be educated in. Proverbs 19:2, zeal without knowledge causes you to miss the mark. And you've got people that are super zealous, but they have no knowledge on what they're zealous about. So again, it's twofold on that end. The one thing that I would say that builds an unbelievable amount of trust with a leader to his people is servant leadership. That builds unbelievable trust to my wife when I serve her, right? It does something different in her. When I serve my wife, even though I'm the leader of the household, when I serve my kids, even though I'm leader of the household, it makes discipline that much easier, because then when the leader serves their people, just like Jesus served the people that he came to, ultimately us, right? Even with death on the cross. When they see a leader that serves, I want to follow somebody that serves. And I'm going to take it one step further. The question is, especially for some of the leadership positions we see in the military, definitely in this U.S. Senate thing, and I know this for me, I would still die for my country. The question is, would you give your last breath so the people that you serve could take their next? That is true servant leadership. And that will bring out the best quality in your people when they really believe it. Now, I say that I would still die for this country. I would give my last breath so the people that I could serve would take their next. And that's hard to say, because I love my wife and I love my girls and I want to see them every day until the point that the Lord calls me home. But the fact of the matter is if you're going to serve as a leader, you have to be willing to die for those that you're serving. And so that's why Jesus says, don't let any of you consider yourself a teacher or a leader, lest you lead one of these little ones astray. It's better that you had a millstone tied around your neck and thrown in the ocean if you're going to lead them astray. And the old saying, heavy is the crown, that is something that's important for us to understand if you find yourself in a leadership position. If you're not willing to give your last breath so that the people you serve can take their next, you are not an effective leader. That's my thought. Or you're not an effective representative in the political case.
That's great input. Thank you for that wisdom there. And you did just mention about your family, your wife, and your kids. So it's a perfect transition now to talk more specifically about leading in our homes and our family. And that's a big point of emphasis for Lead Full Circle, is to make sure we don't ever leave leadership, that conversation, out of our homes, within our family. So I want to start with this question. You are a very driven individual, staying present for your wife and your kids.
Drive is good. Yes, I'm a driven individual. I do. My dad told me something when I was younger. He said, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life, right? So when I was young, I actually became a firefighter before I went to the SEAL teams. I did that for about a year and then said, I'm going to the Navy, going to the SEAL teams, went on a mission trip with the church, felt the Lord calling me to go that way. And he opened the door for me to go to the SEAL teams, went to the SEAL teams. And so it takes a drive to do those things. Finished my MBA, right? That was something completely different from what I had done when I left the SEAL teams, finished my master's in business, became a law enforcement officer, started a business, started a nonprofit. The nonprofit now is a full-time job, and the business that I run is also a full-time job, even though it's a lot less hours than it used to be. So yes, I am a driven individual, and these are all good accolades, and these are things that elevate other people around me. They elevate me and my wife and my girls, because that's how the Lord provides for our family in all of these different positions. But you have to remember that the first thing and the most important thing is who I am in the person of Jesus Christ, because it's the only thing that's eternal. Then the next thing is who I am to that beautiful blonde-headed lady and those 3 little girls, because those are the ones that God gave me to make sure that I draw them to him, or that I do everything I can, maybe I should say this in a better word, to reveal who Christ is to them so that he can draw them to him. That would be a better way of saying that. And train them up in the way that they should go, so that when they're old, they won't depart from it, and continue to do the Great Commission, which is them going out and sharing the gospel of Christ with the world. It starts with the eternal. Then it has to be that next sphere of influence, which is my wife and my girls. And I can go ahead and tell you now, no matter how driven you are, if my wife and my girls are not right, nothing else is going to work. The best example that I can give is a biblical example. And again, sorry for those who are not Christians. As a Christian, I spend a lot of time in the Word of God because I believe it's the truth. He says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And I believe there are a lot of truths, even if you don't believe in Christ like I do, that you can take from the Bible. But King David is not doing what he's supposed to do for the kingdom. He's sitting back at home, even though he should be out at war where the kings were at the time. And what happens? He sees Bathsheba bathing on a roof. He calls Bathsheba. He has an affair with Bathsheba. Bathsheba gets pregnant. He murders her husband by the hands of I believe it was the Philistines, or it might have been the Edomites that they're fighting, whoever it was, doesn't matter. He has him murdered at the wall, right? David kills Uriah. David kills Uriah by the hand of the enemies that they were fighting. And he's called to the table on it by Nathan. And what does Nathan tell him? He says, because you didn't do what you were supposed to do, and then you hid it from God, you will suffer these same things. He says, your family will never see the sword leave it, and you will wind up watching your wives go in front of all of Israel and have affairs on you. What happens? David is run out of the city. He loses all of these great accolades, no matter how driven he was. He slayed Goliath. He conquered many different peoples. Saul had killed his thousands. David his tens of thousands. And all of these attaboys go away. Why? Because he didn't do what he was supposed to do on the initial end by remaining faithful to his wife, to his family, to what he was supposed to do as the king, and he did something else. His son lost his life because of it. His son took over the kingdom for a little while because of it. David was run out of the kingdom. His son went into David's concubines and wives in front of all of Israel. The absolute destruction was unreal. Why? Because David didn't get the first part right. His sphere of influence right there. As a king, he was supposed to go do a specific thing, and he didn't do it. And it ruined his family. It's the same thing for me as a husband and then as a father. I was a husband first. I'm not called to go out and spread the gospel to the nations. I'm not called to go out and rescue everybody out of human trafficking with Covenant Rescue Group. I'm not called to speak on leadership with Lead Full Circle. These are things that I can do, but if it's not right with my wife and my 3 daughters, sorry, there we go, 3 daughters. I can't count them from Alabama. It's not right with my wife and then my 3 daughters. 4 people in my life, I'll never get anything else right. And that's important for us to understand. That might be the most important thing for us to understand. What is your sphere of influence? Everybody wants to go do all these great things. Life is lived in the gray. Where's the gray? My everyday family, my wife and my kids.
Yep. So good. Thank you there. Staying within our family, I thought this was a interesting question to put out in front of you to get your perspective on it. When you go back to your Navy SEAL training, is there a leadership lesson, or is there a lesson you can take from your Navy SEAL training and apply it to the dinner table with your family?
Yeah, sacrifice. Sacrifice. I've got to be willing to die for my buddies when we're overseas. And like I was talking about earlier, about a proper leader, whether it's a U.S. senator, a business owner, or a military brother, you've got to be willing to give your life for the man to the right or the left of you. When I'm sitting at the dinner table, if I'm not willing to give my life for that woman and those 3 girls, then we've got a big problem. It's sacrifice. And here's the other side of it. It's not just physically dying. Sometimes physically dying is easier, right? I think everybody you talk to would die for their kids, die for their wife. I would hope they would. Making sure, let's take it a step back. I know my wife full well she would absolutely die for those babies, right? She might not die for me, but I wouldn't want her to. But no, she would. A mother is going to do everything she can to the point of death to protect her children. A father and a husband should do everything to the point of death to protect his family. What are you giving up? What are you sacrificing on the weekends? Are you more into football? Are you more into your stupid cell phone? Are you more into, hunting or fishing or whatever your hobby is? Are you more into your work? I would say nowadays what I've seen with men that I get to sit down and talk to, they're more consumed with hobbies than they are with their family. Yeah. Now, if your work consumes you, that's at least one step better, because our work is what provides for our families, and you are called to provide for your wife and kids. So that's one thing it's kind of a hard thing to balance. The hobby is the biggest thing. The sitting with the boys, going out and hanging out with, I got to just have some guy time. No, you don't. You do not need any guy time. You're there for that woman and those kids. That's it. And so I would say that's probably the biggest takeaway from the teams is sacrifice. What of me do I have to sacrifice? The last thing I'll leave you with, and I've heard guys say this, is when it comes to family, when I'm overseas with the guys, yeah, I want to get home to my wife and kids, but I'm not with my wife and kids. I'm there to make sure me and all of these guys I'm with come home alive. And the more you think about your wife and kids, the more it negatively impacts your ability to be an effective warfighter. That is the only transition I've seen where you have to put the war fighting and the men on the battlefield with you in front of your wife and kids. Is that with a wartime deployment or even law enforcement work? Because if I'm sitting there thinking about mama and the babies, what am I going to do? I'm going to be a coward, and I'm going to do something stupid that's going to get somebody killed.
Wow. That's good stuff. And I appreciate you saying about hobbies. That's one thing I've seen a lot too. Just, man, when you're home, be present. So 2 questions left. As leaders, we can look back at setbacks and look back at challenges to see, as a leader, I wish I'd have handled this differently, or, hey, I overcame this challenge because I handled it this way. when you think about that, I'd love to hear a time maybe you struggled as a leader and how you worked through that.
Yeah, well, I mean, heck, I struggle as a leader every day running
Right
these
there
two
with
organizations. I mean, yeah, I mean, with what you
you.
do for a living, I struggle every day. The biggest thing is it starts off with prayer. Start your day off with prayer. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Matthew 6:33. I really believe that that's important. Prayer and time in the Word. And once I do that, the Lord kind of seems to set the trajectory appropriately. I mean, Proverbs says the horse is made ready for day of battle, but victory rests in the Lord. So making sure that He is first. Once I know that He is first to start out my day, and even in closing my day with my family, that generally gives me that clarity that helps me go throughout the day. It's not working out. Everybody says, hey, you go for a run in the morning, work out in the morning, it creates clarity. Yeah, I mean, that might to some extent, kind of make you feel better about the day, but it's a temporary feeling. You have to be rooted in what's eternal, and I believe that's the person of Jesus Christ. So that's kind of my what I've seen that helps me, and it has my whole life, day-to-day life, and as a leader here, and even in the SEAL teams, and as a law enforcement officer.
Yeah,
I think that's important.
Yeah, and that ties into my next question, just the practical takeaway that you could give to anybody. And I think that would be it for me as well. Just the importance of starting your day off the right way with the Lord in prayer is such a big deal. So I've got one question left. I do want to ask you. You've led in the battlefield. You've led in the community. You're a great husband, great father. You're a great leader in the home, and that's what this is all about.
I'll tell my wife you said that great husband part.
Yeah, right. Yeah, do that. But just what you stand for as a leader is so encouraging to me. You're running for Senate for the state of Alabama, but at the end of the day, saying all that, when your daughters look back, what do you hope they say about the kind of leader you were for them in their lives?
Oh, I hope they look back and say, my daddy loved Jesus, and I want to love the same Jesus my daddy loves. That's what I want them to say.
Nothing else to add to that. That's just a lot of people may come up with other accolades or things to say for their kids to hang their hat on, but that is such a short but such a powerful answer, and I really appreciate you sharing that answer with everybody. But Jared Hudson, thank you so much for taking time to be with us here at Lead Full Circle today. This has been a very, very good conversation. I'm going to go back and rewatch this podcast, and I'm going to take notes and apply it to my life because you've shared so much wisdom with us. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us for a few minutes a day. But again, I can't thank you enough.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother. If you ever need anything, reach out, shout at me. And hopefully this is beneficial for you and your listeners. Again, if you know anything about Jared Hudson, put Christ first. That's the only thing that's eternal. I encourage you to put Him first if you know Him. Share Him unashamedly with the world around you if you know Him. If you don't know Him, ask God to reveal Himself to you. It will be in the person of Jesus Christ.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jared. Hey, thank you again, Jared, for sharing your story with us today and your wisdom from leadership that extends all the way from the battlefield to the dinner table with your family. I do want to say to all those that are listening, remember now, leading well at work, you will be remembered. But when you lead better at home, that will be felt for generations to come. So if you've enjoyed this conversation today with Jared, I would encourage you to please subscribe, like, and comment on my YouTube channel. That's a really big deal as we try to grow this platform at Lead Full Circle. Thank you for tuning in and watching, and I will see you next time.